Hello and welcome to another video on this channel. In today's video I want to share with you some of my photo edits to provide some transparency about what I do to my photos and what I don't do to my photos. I think especially over the past few years it has become harder and harder to trust what you see on the internet. So many photos you see are not necessarily a genuine representation of what was there when those photos were taken. I see this especially when I do location research, and I'm sometimes shocked by the extent of the manipulations that are done to some of the photos, and often I have to dig quite deep past the popular photos to find some photos which really tell me what to expect when I might visit a location. And because this trust in the genuineness is decreasing, not only for me, but for many people who look at photos over the internet, I thought it would be a good idea to now go through some of my photos. So really share with you a range of edits I do to photos, so going from smaller edits to more extreme edits. So you know when you watch my videos, see my photos, what you get. And also to provide some more value, there will be a second video which I'll release in a few days where I'm going to show you some advanced cloning techniques which I use from time to time and which were also used in some of the photos I now show you. So let's get started. And in the beginning I want to show you 3 photos which you see here on the screen. So I labeled them 1, 2 and 3. And those 3 photos are final edits, and you might have seen some of them in previous videos. And what I now want you to do is just look at those photos and decide for yourself which of the photos is the one where you think it differs the most from the original RAW, so where I did the most dramatic processing to it and where I did the least of the edits. So just take a few seconds, look at them, and later I'm gonna go through the photos, show you the real before and after, and I also show you some more photos. So really going from some minor edits to some more drastic edits. As I said, the complete range. Okay, so how did you assess those photos? What did you think was the most processed one? I can tell you that here number 3 is actually the photo where I did the least processing, so it's closest to what I captured in the RAW file. Then this one here, the number 2, is kind of the middle one, and this first photo is the one where I did the most processing, which you'll also see in a second, because I actually blended multiple photos to get in all the wave action and a lot of gulls, because in a single frame I didn't get the complete combination. And you see also I did a lot more to contrast than, for example, in this photo here. And we start the before and after comparison with the photo I took here at Praia da Marinha in Portugal. And it's actually, in all the photos I now show you, the one where I really did the least in terms of difference between the RAW file and the final edit, which you will see now when I deactivate this final photo and show you the RAW file, which looked like this. So you see I did a long exposure and I really had beautiful light that morning. I had beautiful colors throughout, also down here in the water, the blues, it's all there. And what I did, I just intensified the contrast, added some saturation, and most of the work I did to this photo was really in the details, so making sure that everything's there, everything is tag sharp. I think I also did some focus stacking here, but if you look at the original and the final representation, I would say this photo is as close as it gets when it comes to what was there, what I captured, what I experienced, and then bringing it into this 2D representation of that moment. And actually many of my photos are like that. I might spend 2 hours processing such a photo, but not because I do drastic edits where I change all the content of the photo. It's more like really going into the details and making sure there's no noise, the sharpness is perfect, and so on. So let's move to the next one. So as I said, I show you 10 photos now, and you see how the edits get more and more, and you'll also see my most, I'd call it dramatic edit maybe, in the end. So this photo taken in New Zealand is again a very colorful photo, very dramatic light here, beautiful light on that waterfall, and it was really a unique moment. And looking at it you might think maybe, okay, there was quite some processing involved, but when I now show you the before, you see, okay, I did some cropping, I did some HDR, or let's call it exposure blending, because here those whites I actually did bracketed exposures to get in more of the detail. I added contrast and brought up the colors a bit, because you see in the sky I added some blue and magenta here. Also I blended, as I said, a few photos just to get perfect details, but in terms of what I could capture in a single photo and what is there in the final photo, I think it's still pretty close. And also be reminded that raw photos like this one usually are less contrasty, less colorful than how it actually looks. That's always the goal with a raw photo, to rather capture as much as possible in terms of dynamic range and don't yet contain so much contrast. This is what's added afterwards, and that's why often for me the raw photos are less vibrant than the final outcome. And usually what I try, I process my photos in a way that I go a little past how it really looked, because I think that's necessary. So I think this is a little over the top in terms of what colors you have here in the sky, but it's a 2D representation of what I experienced with all my senses as I stood there. So I think it's important to try to play a bit with contrast and color to invoke at least a bit of those feelings in the viewer. But I tried to keep it still natural enough that it's showing you what you could experience there. Yeah, now we come to the photo of Formentor Lighthouse, and you see here I have some light trails, some streaking clouds, and a composition which I like a lot. It's blue hour shot. And if we look at the before photo, you see also there's actually not too much. So here's the photo where I did some cloning. Down here there was a boat where I also again blended in another photo which was darker up here, because this one is a little overexposed. I just had to quickly capture this to get in those light trails. So everything's there, but I did a bit more than to the last photo. If you look closely, here you see there are some tiny spikes around this light, and also here I did some dodge and burning, working with color, which you don't have in the original. So this is some creative freedom I used here in this photo, adding a bit. And yeah, if you're very critical here, you could say, okay, those little spikes you see around the lighthouse, they weren't there, you are cheating here. But I think they add to the photo, and in this case, this is part of creative processing I do to my photos from time to time. So adding some minor shines around light sources, or sometimes even some spikes, because I think they make the photo more interesting. But all else was there, and I still think that's quite close to what you could experience when you're standing there. Yeah, and with this photo from Westminster Bridge in London, it gets more colorful again. And yeah, actually this was a very dramatic storm rolling in just around sunset, and you see here in the raw photo, it's actually all there. As I said, again, a little less vibrant, a little less contrasty, so this is what I added. And I also cloned out a few people here. I also did some perspective corrections here, but still kind of a typical processing, and I think this final photo is closer to the atmosphere I experienced, because just after taking this photo, it was like chucking it down. I got drenched, I had to run for cover. So yeah, it was really a dramatic display of light and of the elements. So with this photo, the edits get a little bit more dramatic. I'd not call it dramatic yet, but you'll see quite a difference if I show you the raw now. So here you see there's much less color, much less contrast. You see there's a soft shine going on in the fog behind here. And yeah, in the raw photo, less contrasty, less vibrant than what I saw, but still what I did in the end goes quite a bit farther than what I actually saw. The reason here is I wanted blues here in the foreground to give me kind of this cold feel, and then contrast it by some warmish glow, which helps to recreate this atmosphere I had. So I was there, I was cold, but then behind the tree the light was glowing a bit, not as intense as in this photo, but this was how I experienced it. But you see, this is already quite a bit of a change to the photo. Now here we have a photo of a modern city, and such photos is often where I do a bit more, or where I'm a little more free with my processing, especially in terms of color. So this is Quarry Bay, a building there in Hong Kong, and you see there's a nice glow in the sky, there's beautiful colors and lights. If I now show you the raw photo, you see this glow in the sky, it was much more brownish, but it was there, so I did a lot to intensify it. And also the colors throughout the photo, so here the bluish tones, the red tones, the yellows, I increased them, as well as adding a vignette, or basically inverting the light in the image. Because here in this raw photo you see to the edges, here down here it's brighter because of the lights down in this yard where I was standing, and up into the middle it gets darker, which is not ideal if you want to draw the viewer into the photo. So basically what I did, I made the outer parts darker and did some dodge and burn here to the inner parts, also adding some warmish glow here to make it more realistic. You have the glowing sky, which would usually reflect off some of the buildings, especially here where the bright part is. Though this is what I did, but it's still just using what is there. So I had multiple photos. You'll also see here some of the lights are not on in this photo, so I had like 5 photos and blended them to make sure as many of the lights are glowing as possible. And yeah, that's one of the more dramatic edits already, but also something I do a lot when I process photos of modern cities. So this is something you can expect from my photos. Now this photo here, still more processing to it, and the processing I did to this photo was mostly to make it perfect. So I was there in the desert and I had this photo shoot with Mohammed and his dromedaries organized, and I wanted to have this desert look pristine, untouched, which it is in many parts, but still we're close to a camp and you'll have footprints all around, so there are other people running. And this was the first evening where there was really wind, so the next days there were less and less footprints. But if there's no wind for a few days, you'll have quite some. Also, Mohammed and his dromedaries were walking this ridge from the other side before, so I had to do quite a bit of cloning. So let me show you the before, and then you'll also spot another thing I did. So here, the angle they are walking is more downward. So I basically rotated the image a bit, did some perspective, so now it's more like moving upward and away from me. Also what you see up here, this part of the sky, which is basically in the frame here. In the final photo I zoomed in or cropped in a bit, but I also stretched the upper part of the image just a touch, so maybe I think moving this edge up until here roughly to be able to exclude the sky completely. So those dunes here in the background, they are actually looking higher and more dramatic than they really were. So you see this here. So I stretched it quite a bit here. This one, maybe factor 1.3. And I think here, because this is all abstract, it's okay to do so. For a mountain, for example, this would have been drastic. If I had stretched a mountain by 1.3, I would suddenly have a mountain which looks far from how it really is. Here for this scene, it's just a creative means to create a photo which holds the viewer in the frame instead of drawing him out. But you see also a lot of footprints here, down here, footprints, footprints, footprints everywhere. And I removed a lot of those. But the atmosphere, the light, everything's there. Also the composition, I just had to slightly change the perspective. And yeah, I was already hinting that I will show you in another video how to do some advanced cloning. Here with all those footprints, it's actually not that easy, so you can't just simply clone, because sometimes you also have patterns here on the sand. So it's a little more tricky, and I want to show you some techniques you can use, and this will be in the next video. Okay, let's move on. Now finally, here's the photo from Essaouira, and you see it's now photo number 8, so it's coming quite late in the range of edits I do to photos, which tells you here I did a bit more. So that's the final image. And look at here, we have a gull flying in, we have gulls sitting on those rocks, we have waves crashing in, and I actually used like 6 photos which I blended. So I'll now show you just one raw file where you see, okay, there's one gull and there's some waves, and I cropped in from the side, which you see. I added a lot of contrast And by adding contrast, what I actually also revealed was the bluish tones in the sky, which you see here. The sky is very blue and dark. This color is already there a bit, but not really present in the raw photos. So this is necessary to have this photo look dramatic and give it depth, in my opinion, but it's not exactly how it looked. So you see here, it's much more clarity and vibrance in the photo than is in the raw file. Now again, raw file, less vibrant, less contrasty, but you see here I took quite some liberty with processing the photos. And also by adding or combining different frames, I'm creating a scene which was hard to capture in a single frame, but still I'd call it like minor time blending, where I capture not only a single moment, I capture the range of moments I experienced. I was standing there on this wall where I took this photo for like 20 minutes, gulls flying around me, the breeze of the sea, waves crashing. So it's a lot I took in that time, and I wanted all of that in this single photo. Yeah, and with this photo from Machu Picchu, we now arrive at a stage which I do very, very seldom to my photos. This is a very extreme processing where I was at Machu Picchu. It cost me quite a bit to get there, to be there, and I had only one chance to get a photo there. And it was a very moody morning. There was rain, there was fog drifting through the valley, and yeah, not really light. So it took several long exposures and I combined them, and I now show you one raw file for one of those long exposures, and you see what I mean when I tell you that's a dramatic processing. So that's the original raw file from one. You see here I have clouds drifting or fog drifting through the valley, but not on this side. For this I had another photo which you see where the clouds were on this side, and then I had another one with clouds here. So it's already 3 photos combined. Then I did some dramatic vignette to basically have this bright part here a bit mimicked in the sky, but such a strong vignette wasn't here. And also I did some cropping, darkening the image, make it much more moody. This makes this image more of an artistic image than it is a real representation of the morning. It's more like how I wanted it to look and how I want to remember it, so dark, moody, mystic, versus how it was that morning, really miserable, cold, wet, people in rain jackets all around. But yeah, still this whole place, it just radiates some special atmosphere despite the weather, and I try to bring more of that out in the final edit, although it wasn't necessarily what I experienced that morning. That's why this is in the category of dramatic edits. And finally, my most processed photo ever, and yeah, that's typical when I shoot night photos. I have a very high standard when it comes to quality, so I can't just take one photo and process it. So for this photo, I took like 40 photos of the night sky, which I averaged to get the best and cleanest details here for the Milky Way, and I think this was Venus or something. And then I kept the camera in place like 90 minutes to capture photos for the foreground during blue hour, all in that direction, all of this composition. But yeah, it's a very extreme time blending. And I now show you a photo which is just one frame I captured of the Milky Way. So you see here, also you see here I had the camera still tilted a bit upwards, which is something I do a lot when I photograph the night sky. During dark I have the camera slightly tilted upward, and then in blue hour I will tilt it downward to have the foreground in it. And kind of the combination of the two you see in this photo. This is one of the blue hour photos, and you still see here's the Milky Way shining through a bit in blue hour. Not so much anymore, it's also moved much farther up than I have in the photo I captured here. Here it was farther down, moved up, and in the end the combination is like a time blending of photos which are 90 minutes apart. So that's not exactly what you see when you're standing there. When you're standing there, it's really like you either see the night sky and everything else is black, or you see foreground and just a bit of stars in the night sky. But the whole experience that morning, being there for those 90 minutes, this is what I tried to recreate in this photo. So giving you this feel of being there, experiencing first the night and then transitioning into more of a blue hour, where at some point the dunes are revealed. This is as far as it goes with my processing. This is the most dramatic processing I think I ever did to a photo, at least of all the photos you see on my homepage. And yeah, it's maybe 1 out of 100 or even less. Okay, so there you have it. There you have the complete range of edits I do. And yeah, the photos I show in my videos most of the time are more like in the lower half, so 1 to 5, which I showed you. Sometimes I have what you saw in the photo 6 up to 7. And those last two, the photo from Machu Picchu and then this one here from the desert, are kind of an exception. But I do this from time to time. What I don't do is replace skies or put in skies which weren't there. So in this case, you could say, yeah, it's kind of a blend where you put in a sky which wasn't there because here the sky wasn't there. But yeah, I had the camera in place. The sky was there. It was only there 90 minutes before. And for me, this is still something which I do, this kind of time planning, because I still have to put in the effort, be there the right time of the year when the Milky Way is in the right direction, where it has the right angle across the horizon, all that stuff, all that effort which goes into such a photo versus just, okay, I capture a photo of the desert anytime and then I capture the night sky somewhere else and just put it together. There's much less effort involved in such a photo then, and this would take away all the joy, because putting in effort for photos is actually what makes landscape photography interesting for me. If I would go out and get the photo with a colorful sky every time, it would be boring. Yeah, and that being said, I think we're gonna close this video now. You've now seen normal edits, I do a lot. Then you've seen a little more drastic edits and also some, I'd call them dramatic edits. You've seen the complete range. What do you think? Did you expect more or less processing in my photos if you look at the before and afters? Just leave a comment, let me know if you are shocked by my edits, or yeah, if you think, oh, it's much less than you thought. I'd be interested in hearing that. And yeah, hope you liked that video. Leave a thumbs up and see you on the next one. Bye.